This is a case study for a married couple, 46 and 45 years old, who reached out to me because they wanted to retire at 50 years old. They have a 14-year-old daughter who is wanting to go to an Ivy League school. They have pension and Social Security and $2 million already saved up. The problem they faced before reaching out was wondering if they had enough saved up to spend $100,000 a year, and also how to avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty, because $1.3 million out of their retirement savings are in the retirement accounts, and they all carry a 10% early withdrawal penalty if you pull money out before 59 and a half. So before reaching out, what they tried was, number one, try to save up more in their taxable account instead of their 401ks in order to build up what they called a bridge fund. And as a result of that, they were not able to take advantage of the tax savings that putting money into a traditional 401k would offer them. The husband also ran some online retirement projections and felt pretty good about his chances, but he was afraid of his own blind spots, so he reached out to me to do a one-time retirement assessment. And I was happy to offer this because he was able to get professional advice and guidance without giving up investment control. And he avoided paying a 1% investment management fee, which he didn't feel like he needed to pay as a current investor of Vanguard investment funds. So I looked at his and his wife's pension, Social Security, and retirement savings to come to a comprehensive recommendation that involves the use of 72T SEPP, which stands for Substantially Equal Periodic Payments. The recommendation also included the use of a Roth conversion ladder, and the money that he needs to use for the first 10 years of his retirement involves the use of target date maturity bond ETFs. We also looked at optimizing their pension and Social Security claiming strategy that maximizes the lifetime expected income. So make sure to stick to the end to see the full analysis and recommendation. And before we dive into the case study, I am a certified financial planner with over a decade of experience, and in this case, I gave recommendations to this client, but I am not your financial advisor. So this video is for educational purposes only, and it is not meant to be financial advice. And anytime I discuss an investment product, it is not an investment endorsement. So back to the case study. Let's look at where they are now, starting with their savings and investments. They have just shy of $2 million saved up, with $105,000 in cash and $207,000 in taxable investments, primarily in individual stocks and stock funds. These are the most flexible accounts, and they can sell the investments and use any time without encountering any early withdrawal penalty. Unfortunately, with $300,000, this isn't enough to last them between 50 to 59 and a half. They have $1.1 million in 401k, $140,000 in Roth 401k, and $91,000 in Roth IRAs. They have $109,000 in their health savings account, which is fantastic because you get a tax deduction when you put the money in. It grows tax deferred, and if you pull it out for qualified medical expenses, there is no rule on when you can pull it out, and it comes out tax free. So if they have medical expenses come up after they retire at 50 and before 59 and a half, this should be a very easy account to pull from. They have a daughter who is just starting high school and is likely to attend an Ivy League school. So with how expensive those schools can be, they would very likely spend down all of the 529 account. And they have made a decision as parents, if this is not enough, the daughter would take on student loans to pay the rest of the tuition. Since they are not worried about paying for college, having saved up $242,000 in a 529 account, it makes our planning efforts for their retirement a lot simpler. So let's take a look at their retirement income options as they have Social Security and pension through their work. For the husband, assuming that he stops working at 50 years old, he can start at different ages. He can start at 55 in two different ways. He can start at 62 and also 65. This column shows the monthly income that he can expect, and this is the annualized number. The level income option is designed for people who are intending to start Social Security at 62, so they get more income between 55 to 62, and then once Social Security presumably is started, they would need their income less from their pension, so it would go down. The later they start the pension, the higher the income is. But between 55 and 65, they miss out on 10 years or close to $300,000 of income. So is it worth it to delay and start at 65 instead? So I ran an analysis, and in order to get the most comprehensive understanding of which is the best plan, you need to adjust each year's income by inflation and then add it all up. If the life expectancy for the husband is 70 years old, then getting the pension at 55 and getting the level income, front loading the benefit before 62 gets the most lifetime benefit. If he is expecting to live to 75 or 80, then starting at 55 actually gets him the highest benefit. But if he expects to live past 85, then starting at 62 gets him the most lifetime inflation adjusted benefit. What I do find interesting is that delaying to age 65 never ends up being in the client's best interest, because the husband is expecting to live past 85 just based on his parents' own history. It makes sense for him to start taking the pension at 62 instead. Another important benefit is that the survivorship benefit goes up for the wife as well. So let's take a look at whether the husband should take single life versus having 100% survivorship, meaning the wife will not lose a single penny if the husband passes away. In order to do that, he does have to give up some income, and over his lifetime from 62 to 70, he'll get $348,000 from the single life and over $300,000 with the survivorship benefit. Now, the wife only needs to live 2 more years in order to make back the money that she would have lost if they took the single life instead. If the husband lives to age 80, she would have to live 4 more years in order to make back the lost income. Then if he lives to age 90, she would have to live 8 more years in order to make back the lost income. And ultimately, my recommendation for them was to go for the 100% survivorship. The wife is younger, and women do tend to live longer than men. Also, the biggest reason is that the wife is very conservative in her decision making. Going with the 100% survivorship is going to be important for them, especially considering the fact that this one income source is 30% of their retirement income. Now let's take a look at the wife's pension. It is slightly different in the sense that she has the ability to take it all out as a lump sum and roll it into an IRA or just pull all of the money out. If she retires at 50 and then starts distributing the income or the lump sum at age 50, she can have $65,000 as a lump sum or $353 per month. If she were to stop working at 50, then wait until 65, 15 years later to distribute the money, then she gets a lump sum of $152,000 or a lifetime income of $1,053. One thing I noted here was over 15 years and growing $90,000, that equates to a 5.8% annualized growth rate, which I think is pretty attractive as a guaranteed growth. To decide which is the best way of getting their pension, I looked at a couple of metrics. Number one, it's the same one we looked at before for the husband, the lifetime inflation adjusted benefit. You see at this table, when she hits 75, it hits that transition point where she does make more money over her lifetime. This side of the table helps us decide whether to take the lump sum or the lifetime income. If she started her pension at age 65 to get the $1,053 per month, she would have to live to age 85 in order to have earned 5.7% on her original principal of $152,000, which I think is pretty decent, given a bond ladder portfolio may provide a similar rate of return while taking on the interest rate risk and the default risk of bonds. Finally, the recommendation I made for the wife's pension is to delay to 65 because the lump sum grows at 5.8% annualized guaranteed, and then at 65 they can decide whether to take the lump sum or lifetime income. Given the conservative nature that the wife has, the husband is expecting that they would take the annuity option anyway. So now let's move on to Social Security. This is the wife's benefit table. It shows if she started at age 62, then it shows $2,133. If she starts at full retirement age at 67, she gets $3,195 per month. If she waits until 70, the latest, then her benefit grows to $4,072. And all of these numbers here are showing in today's dollars. So if the cost of living goes up by 20%, by the time she actually starts, then all of these numbers would be inflated by 20%. So let's look at both of their pension options. If they start at 62, the husband gets $2,668. The The wife gets $2,133 per month. For full retirement age, they get $3,848, and the wife gets $3,195. At age 70, they get $4,797, and the wife gets $4,072. So now let's decide whether it makes sense to delay. This is a summarized table that shows the combined benefit for the both of them, and it shows a comparison if they were to start the pension as early as possible at age 62 or at full retirement age at 67. The blue bar is starting as early as possible, and the gray bar is starting at 67. The first few years, there is no income at all if you waited until age 67, but at 67, you can see the income is higher than starting at 62. So after you add it all up, assuming that they both live to age 95, then it would mean they would have $1.2 million less in lifetime benefit. A pretty significant difference. And now let's look at the data in another way. This shows the exact same data, but it adds up the benefit over time. It's cumulative. Whereas the previous table showed only the income from that specific year. And you will see a break-even point of 78 years old. Meaning, if they live past 78, then they would have made the right financial decision to delay until age 67 to start Social Security. Now let's look at the difference if they were to delay to age 70 instead. Same table, this shows the annualized income starting at age 70 would result in $2 million more, assuming that they live to age 95. Some people may think, I'm not going to live to age 95. So what we look at is the break-even point. If you delay from 62 to 70, is age 80. So if you are expecting to live past 80 years old, then it may make sense for you to consider delaying until age 70. And this is a case-by-case basis. Everybody should not just by default delay until age 70. Everybody's circumstances are going to be different. Life expectancy, their preference for income is going to be different. So you have to do your own analysis to see what makes sense for you. For this particular client, because they have enough savings to live off of before age 70, and they are expecting to live past age 80, then it makes sense for them to delay. So there are quite a few benefits of delaying Social Security. Number one is the growth. Each year you delay an 8% growth, and then you get a cost of living adjustment on top of the 8% growth. So if inflation for that particular year was 3%, then the actual growth of delaying is 11%. The second and most important benefit for this client is that delaying will allow the widow to have a higher income. The wife is about a year or two younger, and women life expectancy in the US is 5 years longer than men. So we may be talking about the wife potentially being widowed for 7 years. And when there's a married couple, the wife doesn't get to keep both Social Security income when the spouse passes away. They get to keep whatever is the higher one. And the third benefit is that they're going to have less money invested in risky assets. Because they are more dependent on their savings before 70 years old, they're actually going to be spending down their investment savings, right? And those investments are invested in the stock market primarily, and they are taking on risk. So reducing the dollars that they have invested in the stock market while taking on higher growth rate in their Social Security is a fairly good trade-off. So let's summarize their income sources and see what it looks like at different stages of their retirement. And I show everything in today's dollars. I assume a 2.8% inflation rate going forward. And at 62 for the husband, 61 for the wife, $30,000 of income starts kicking in. So at 65 for the wife, her pension kicks in, even though it is $1,053 per month, roughly $12,000. By the time she is 65, we're looking at a value of potentially only $4,700 per year. And when the husband turns 70 and the wife turns 70, both of their Social Security kicks in, and it will be in today's dollars, $136,000. So once the wife turns 70, they will have almost all of their lifetime spending needs covered by 4 retirement income sources. And the planning project becomes simpler now because we focus on how to provide income between 50 to 70 years old while avoiding the 10% penalty for the money that they pull out before 59 and a half. Now we do have to look at long-term care. That is a very high cost that we cannot ignore. So some money does have to be earmarked for long-term care expenses. So now that we have a full understanding of their financial situation, let's take a look at the plan and recommendation. Below are some of the baseline assumptions for what their assets look like when the husband turns 50. They still have $100,000 a year in spending. They both don't work anymore and have no income. The taxable account now grows to $300,000, not including the cash. And they have $1.5 million in traditional retirement accounts and $300,000 in Roth retirement accounts. And here is the plan for each stage of their retirement. To provide the income that they need before 59 and a half, there are two strategies we're going to take advantage of to avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty. The first one is 72T SEPP. Again, it stands for substantially equal periodic payments. So the 72T is an agreement you have with the IRS to pull out a fixed amount of money every single year. And the rule is you have to pull it out for at least 5 years or until you turn 59 and a half. Whichever comes later. And because they are starting at 50 years old, he has to make sure to pull it out until he is 59 and a half. So this is the first source, and you'll see it here a formula, $60,000 minus $10,000. So $60,000 is the actual amount he will be pulling out, and $10,000 is what he will be withholding for taxes, netting him $50,000. So between 50 to 59 and a half, through this, he's going to have $50,000 per year. And because he has $300,000 saved up in a taxable account, over 4 or 5 years, he will spend $50,000 each. And the second strategy to avoid the early withdrawal penalty is by using Roth conversions. So between 50 and 54, he is going to convert $50,000 per year for 5 years total. And what this allows him to do is 5 years later, he is going to be able to pull out $50,000. So at 50 years old, he converts $50,000. At 55, he can pull out the original $50,000 that he converted over. And at 56 years old, he can pull out the money that he converted when he was 51. Each chunk of conversion needs to sit for 5 years, and then he can pull it out before 59 and a half. And whatever you convert, you also have to pay taxes on the year you converted. So this $50,000 is the net amount. We're going to convert $60,000 and assume $10,000 for taxes. So for the money that he needs between 50 to 59 and a half, we're going to set up several different buckets. So the taxable savings that he's going to pull $50,000 out of starting at 50 years old until 55, he needs 5 years. So each $50,000 will be invested in its own bond ladder. And then the portion that he needs for the 72T, that is $60,000 and it needs to last until 59 and a half, so 10 years. Each $60,000 will be converted and invested into its own bond ladder. Finally, the Roth conversion, the part he will be converting between 50 to 54 and then start spending at 55, he will need to invest that into a 5-year bond ladder as well. So when you add it all up, that is $1.15 million invested all in bonds. It really secures his spending needs because the money he needs for the next 10 years of his retirement is never subject to stock market risk. Now for the retirement bucket he needs after 59 and a half, after he's set aside everything into the bond ladders, he is left with $600,000 in a traditional 401k and IRA, and then $300,000 in Roth 401k IRAs. Because he doesn't need to touch this money for at least 10 years, I suggested for him to be invested in global equities or as risky as he can stomach. Each year that he retires starting at 50, he should also set aside $100,000 into a 10-year Treasury inflation protected security in order to secure the needs that he needs starting at 60. And the good thing is for the money he needs starting at 60 until 70 years old, he doesn't need $100,000 every single year. He only needs $70,000 starting at age 62. Starting at age 66, he needs $66,000 in today's dollars. And then once they hit 70 years old, then they will live off solely from their pension and Social Security income, and they don't need to spend their investments anymore. So when I delivered all of this recommendation to the client, he reacted emotionally and said it's just all very real now. And the second reaction was that he was nervous, seeing that he would have to spend down $1.15 million before 59 and a half, because that is a big portion of his retirement savings. And also there is some hesitance to go from a currently very stock heavy portfolio to over 50% in bonds. So we talked about retiring at 55 instead, because it dramatically simplifies his retirement planning. one big benefit is that he can stay on the employer health insurance plan. This is a particular benefit only available to him because his employer was bought out by another company and they wanted to retain the senior employees, including him, and they offered them to work until 55, and then when they retire, they can choose to stay on the employer health insurance plan. So before Medicare is available for him at age 65, he won't need to use the Affordable Care Act option. He can, but he also has the option of the employer health insurance plan, which simplifies things a lot easier and may be cheaper than Affordable Care Act. And also, there is no need to use the restrictive strategy of 72T payments or to handle the complexity of a Roth conversion ladder. And that is because if you work until 55 years old, you can pull money out of the 401k of the company you last worked for without any worry about early withdrawal penalty. That is called the rule of 55. It makes things dramatically simpler. And there's 5 more years that he will be saving money into his retirement and investment accounts. There's 5 more years for those compound growth to happen, and 5 less years that he will be spending down savings. So all of these will make a really secure retirement if he chooses to retire at 55. So the final recommendation from me to him was to focus on making his work enjoyable and also less stressful so he can prioritize his health. So what this means for the client is that if they are 50 years old and they're still choosing to work, if they are working with a toxic boss, they now have leverage over them. If they are dealing with a work project that is particularly stressful, maybe they could be requested to be transferred to a different team and work on something more fun. And they have more energy to focus on their health and spending time with family that is meaningful for them. And all of these things will bring them more joy and fulfillment and increase their overall well-being. And because of that, they may not be so hyper-focused on retiring at 50 years old. And they would think, this is great, I'm going to work until 55. And they're going to end up having a lot more money as a result of that. But in order to have all of the options, they need to invest as if they are going to retire at 50 years old. If they choose to retire at 55 and then invest more aggressively because of that, anytime the stock market goes down between 50 to 55, they lose the leverage that they have over their life choices. So I wanted him to focus on prioritizing wealth preservation as opposed to the aggressive portfolio that he has invested in today. So this couple has already won the game by saving so much money for their own retirement and also for their daughter's college education. So continuing to play the game will only increase the chance that they end up losing what they were originally chasing. I hope you learned something valuable today. Thanks for watching.